Welcome. So, what is missing for better joined up working for adult and child wellbeing practice? If you live or work with children and families, especially those with some additional needs of any sort, I can almost guarantee that you have sometimes said it yourself or heard others saying, if only things were more joined up. So the question is, why isn't it easier to achieve that particular aim that we all know is important? Now, my name is Dr. Kathy Betwan. I'm a clinical psychologist, an experienced teacher, and a parent. And I've been working with something called a relationship health and an IMATTR informed approach. So, as someone who's worked in this area, I know full well that there is no lack of effort on behalf part of professionals and in parents, but somehow joined up working is very hard to achieve. And sometimes the sheer scale of needs can threaten to defeat even the best small initiatives that mean well but find it very difficult to progress. So there are common frustrations, aren't there? Professionals and organizations often find themselves being drawn into situations which feel very stuck or very escalated. And in that situation, we feel very perplexed at why our own systems are not working better when the intentions are there. But the impact of poorly joined up practice is often really felt by individual professionals and practitioners who are conscientious and trying to do the right thing, but find themselves holding responsibility that feels over and above what is realistic or reasonable to be held for any one person. Now, in my own journey, I came to, trying to understand this situation, I came to realize that there were some real structural issues in the way that our services were actually designed. Notably, that caring for the learning needs of parents and carers was no agency's core priority unless things got very, very escalated, in which case agencies would be drawn in, whether they liked it or not, from all different quarters, but often in a rather chaotic fashion. So I also realised that there was no shared framework to support better joined up practice between health and education. So though we had the desire to do more joined up and prevention practice, we actually came from to think about this issue with very, very different language and culture. So, for example, the sort of ways that people who are trained in health agencies think is very different from the way that people think in education agencies and the way that people think in community agencies. So my question was, if we really want to achieve some more joined up practice, wouldn't it be helpful if we had some shared sort of language and some shared sort of priorities over which we could at least discuss and debate? And so it was in the desire to try and see what was missing that was making this so difficult to achieve. I went back to the research, and what the research told me was that was actually very clear is that if we wanted to make impact on well-being, then we needed to talk more about relationships. And what surprised me was that relationships was not the core priority of any of these key agencies unless, as I say, until things had got very, very escalated. So it seems to me that we have an opportunity that if we want to improve our prevention and preparation practice for more joined up working, we need to start thinking about the understanding and skills that people need for building healthier relationships. So the research is there. There's decades and decades of research showing us the shifts that we need to make in terms of our own agency practices and organization practices and our professional emphasis. The shift of focus that's needed is to move away from seeing individuals in isolations. Individuals in reality develop in the context of their relationships. And therefore, there's a set of skills that professionals need, as well as individuals who are living in those situations, in order to make sense of what's actually happening. So we say the skills for relationship health really matter. So I would really like to argue that if we made the effort to invest in insight and skills, this is what's going to help us shift our practice towards more prevention and away from so much reactivity. When we move towards prevention, what the research is telling us is that the absolute key skill we need to do is to understand more about brain development and how we support brain development. In particular, the adult has a really key role to play in the brain development of the child, and the brain development is key to the skills for relationships that any child is going to acquire. And when we neglect those opportunities to build those skills, we have long-term consequences that are seen across a child's life. So these skills emerge in a predictable and hierarchical order. And when we haven't developed these skills, we can end up as young people and as adults, having got very poor foundations for the ability to manage relationships. So, my view right now is that we do not need just more pathways to signpost to. Instead, what we need is a culture shift. We need to move away from being in reactive mode to building the insight and skills to better enable us to problem solve and find a way forward in complex and challenging situations. We will not be able to address challenging situations unless we develop the skills to be able to think about them and the skills to be able to understand ourselves and other people. So, this is what I call an iMatter relationship health learning approach. It's designed in order to empower individuals who are motivated to be part of a movement that is arguing for a culture shift to take action through their own roles, through their own steps. You can get started without needing anybody else to change, but obviously you can work with others to bring about more shift in your own setting, whether that's in your own home or in your workplace or in your school. So if you'd like to learn more, there's going to be a growing number of videos on this site. And otherwise, you can go along to the website, imattertraining.com, where I hope you're going to find easy, small steps that you can take to move things forward for yourself and those that you're working with. Look forward to hearing your questions.